Hello, everyone. It's my favorite day of the week. It's Wednesday. We come together and we make a battle map, or a map, actually, with our community. Today, we're going to be making a dry dock, or what can also be called a shipyard, with the Fantasy Battlemap 2.0 style. So really, really looking forward to this. This was heavily requested on our canny requests and streams, so we're going to proceed with that. Before we jump in, just some real quick announcements. The first one is, if you haven't already joined our Discord server, we have an incredibly helpful community, so definitely go check out our Discord server. I'll provide that link in the chat, don't you worry. Also, if I could direct you over to your updates here, what's new, you'll see that we just released our stream calendar for the month of June right here. Now, if you're not finding the kind of content that you want to see in our streams and on our YouTube channel, you should definitely go click our canny request for streams and go ahead and let us know what kind of content you want. It works just like all the other canny pages. The most votes means the most likely going to be made. So just go ahead and keep that in mind. All right, so again, we're making a dry dock. We're just going to go ahead and jump right in. I'll go ahead and provide those links real quick. Those links are in the chat, Discord and our canny page. So go check those out. All right. Okay. So first, what we're going to want to do is we want to turn on the grid, and I'm using the portrait instead of the landscape aspect ratio because what I want is to show the length of the ship, and so portrait works out well. Because we're making a shipyard, we're going to be using a ship as kind of like a scale, right? And a guide. First, we'll turn that grid on. Usually the grid works really, really well. And I'll turn on that grid. Actually, I forgot to mention this. There is an option down at the bottom right here now. So you don't actually have to go to that grid tool. Just go to the bottom there and you'll see that there's a grid. So now when you're deciding your grid, some people might get confused, like what kind of grid should I be using when I'm working on a map? And the truth is it really depends on the map. Now, because ships are fairly large, it kind of makes sense that the grid might be a little bit smaller, right? If the grid is really big, like if I go ahead and reduce the grid to 15, which is half of what it was, or double half, then you'll see that the squares are pretty big, right? And so a ship is quite large, and we want room for the dockyard to be around the ship. So it only makes sense to use a different grid. So we'll use just the default 30 by 40 here. That'll work out great. And the first thing we'll want to do is to create the pier, and we're going to make that out of concrete or stone, right? So we'll go ahead and go to the line tool. We'll go click stamp, and I think this stamp right here will work just fine. That works fine. We can desaturate it or leave it where it is. We'll use the pen, and I'm going to use the grid as a guide. Down here, we'll snap to grid, and we're going to create the shape. So first what I'll do is just go here, I want to see here. Okay, and I'm going to grab a ship. Just type that in the catalog, and I'm going to choose kind of the smaller one, because you see how big the ships are. It's huge, see? So it kind of makes sense to bring the scale of the ship down. And this is a pretty large ship, pretty decent size. And it also gives room for this, and we want to put it near water. I'm just using this as a divider line to show where the water is. I want enough room to create the ramp that the ship is being constructed in, and I want to have some elevation in the back part of the ship. So because people need to get from one side to the other, just because if there's not a ship there, then how do they get to one side of that bay? It's a 30 by 40, by the way. Thanks, taxes. 30 by 40. Okay. So now that I have that set, let's go ahead and edit this shape or this line. Here we go. And let's go ahead and create the bay. So let's go ahead and put it here. And we want enough room for people to work. So we'll click, put another one here. Looks good. Another one right here and another one right here. Now it looks like that shape, I made it uneven, and that's fine. Because what's really cool is if you feel like you made a mistake, you can always just click these nodes right here, and you can just move them over. Now speaking of nodes, I think I'm going to have some more dimension or more shape. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and push this out a little bit right here. So I have a little bit more interesting shape instead of just these flat lines. There we go. Oopsie, we'll go back up. There we go. I think that looks nice. Let's add that. And then I'm going to fill that in with the add mode of the mask tool. And the quickest way to do that is just to use the shape. I'm going to go add. And I'm going to turn off the mask effects. We don't need those. Okay, and the reason why I'm using the add mode of the mask tool being separate is because I want to be able to paint separate from the water bits. And then we'll go in with the circle brush. And we're just going to fill in the rest. There we go. Nice. And then we're going to want to pick a texture that we want to maybe use to be as the pier. Since it's already made of stone, it kind of makes sense to maybe use stone texture. So we can just go to foreground. We'll go open up the catalog. And we'll kind of look for a stone texture that might look good. This one looks okay. It's got moss in it. This one would look good if we desaturate it a bit. Let's go up to the top here and see. There's this one right here might work good too. We can click that. Let's just fill it and see how it looks. Okay. I think it needs a little bit more contrast, and the stones look a little too big. So we'll go to the advanced settings and bring the size down a little bit. I know I've repeated this multiple times in the past, said this lots of times in the past, but whenever you scale down stamps, you're going to want to scale down the textures as well, because it looks really weird if you have tiny little stamps, but then the textures are 100%, and it's going to look really out of whack. So texturing should be, you know, try to keep to scale or whatever scale you're using with textures and stamps. We're also going to boost up the contrast because the line work is pretty dark on the wall that we're using. So let's darken up that as well with contrast, and then we'll fill again. And it kind of works a little better there. Okay, so now we have that. I might even want to push this down a little bit more because I think I'll create even more space. There we go. What about there? Looks good. And again, you'll just have to fill this up with the add mode of the mask tool. That works out well. There we go. All right. So now that the concrete or the stone part is done, we want to obviously put down some docks, right? So what we'll do is we'll scale this down, and then we're going to use the line tool to create our docks. So we'll do the line tool. We're going to click pen, go in, and just click in dock in here, and you'll see some docks right here. And I'm going to make them a darker brown. I'm just really picky. I like darker wood than the lighter wood. So we'll go ahead and put the dock all the way on that side, and I'll make it a little bit smaller because it seems like it's about 15 feet wide. That's pretty big. So we'll scale it down a little bit more. There we go. And then we'll put it up against here. We're going to copy paste, put another one right here. There we go. And now you have the docks so that people can kind of work on the upper parts. That makes sense. And I'm going to change the brightness of this too because, like I said, I just like that darker wood. I think it looks nicer. And we're going to go ahead and turn the grid off for now. We'll take a step back and look at it. I think that looks good. Okay. Now that we've made that part, let's go ahead and add some more parts for the actual up in here. And so what I'll do first is I'll want to pick a texture that I want to be on the ground with the BG layer. And what works really nice is there's some nice gravel right here. This is a warm rocky stone. I kind of like this. This works really well. And we'll go ahead and bring the brightness down a little bit on it. I'm going to increase the size of it. And then I'll fill it with the BG layer. Fill. There we go. Okay. Now we'll put our water in here soon. We're going to use the shape tool to put in water. So you've got the two concrete or stone piers. You've got some docks, some walkway for workers to work and try to get onto the ship itself. So we're going to want to create the skids that are going to go across for the ramp. So we'll turn the grid back on. I'm going to use it. We're going to go back. We're going to use wood. Let's go ahead and just use this one right here, and we'll turn off the caps. I don't really need those. We'll turn those off. And I'll turn the shadows off for now. We'll go back to that later. Now, to make this, there's a certain shape that we're trying to make. And to kind of show that we're making this shape, this is kind of the shape from a side view of that ramp, because the boat needs to have supports and it needs to be able to be pushed down the ramp. So how was it that I portrayed that? So let's go ahead and do that. First, we'll create the first kind of ramp that goes down the center. Press enter, and we're going to change the brightness on this, and we'll change the layer as well. So let's go this way. We'll go down a layer, push it down, bring the brightness down. There we go. Make it nice and dark because it seems to be further down than the rest. So there's that first one. And then that's the first ramp. And then we'll create a second ramp, a second part that goes like this. Let's put it right here, I think should look good. Let's do that. Press enter. And then I'm going to copy paste it and bring it over this way. And to kind of show that there is a difference between these lines, I can make this just a slightly brighter. There we go. To kind of show that this middle one is further down. Now, if you kind of feel like it should go further out, I feel like the skids should go much further out. So I'll just go ahead and use these right here. We'll use the nodes. I'm going to push this all the way down quite a bit. Same thing with this one, we'll push the nodes down. Same thing with this one, push the node down. I want it to go all the way out to the water. Here we go. Okay, then the next step is to kind of create the wooden skids that go across. So we'll go ahead and do this again, but we're going to turn off nodes and go instead to the pen, and we'll go across like this. There we go. And I'll push these down even more. I'm going to copy and paste this, and I'll try to space them out fairly evenly. There we go. And then one more right there. Okay. Let's just put in one more right over here too. There we go. Okay. And then when we put the boat down, it's going to go down that skid, whoop, into the water. Right? Makes sense. Perfect. Okay. And then we might want to even put maybe some, we might want to consider maybe put some boardwalk or dock right here too. So we'll copy, we'll paste, put one more right here like this. There we go. Put down here. It's okay if they overlap a little bit. We'll put some maybe some logs or some boards or something that go across to kind of make that go across, or we don't have to add that at all because I actually do kind of like it this way. So we'll leave it like that. Okay. So since we finished all that, let's go ahead and just group all this and call this the base. So we're going to create group, or just press the G key, call it the base. It's on layer -5. We're probably going to end up putting this up maybe a couple more layers just in case. Put it at layer -3, -2 maybe. Let's go with that. Okay. And then I can put the boat on there. Perfect. And I'll make it just a little bit brighter. So just to show that there's some height there. That works out great. Okay. Looking good so far. All right. Let's go ahead and create some more, maybe some more height, because I'm kind of seeing that this whole pier is a little flat. So maybe we want to create some kind of more levels. So what we'll do is we'll use the same stone that we used before. We'll use the shape tool or the line tool, and I'll push this up a layer like this. And then what I'll do is I'll use that same texture that I used right here, and I'll make it just a little bit brighter because I want to show depth. Oopsie, there we go. Let's go ahead and just apply that and see how that looks right there. Let's make it a little bit brighter. Let's go with 120, and then we'll use a shape right here like this. Press enter. There we go. That looks good. We'll copy paste, put this one here, do it again. Right here, just to kind of show some height differences. Let's turn the grid off now. We don't really need it anymore. Down here at the bottom, turn that grid off. Now let's take a look at it real quick. Yeah, I think that looks good. Let's go ahead and create some boardwalk or a gangway that will kind of go across these two pieces right here. Let's bring up the brightness a little bit on the this as well. And I'm going to use shadows to show height. So we'll go into shadow here. And the one thing that you're going to struggle with is it kind of does this. So we'll have to change like this, push it out a little bit that way. And then this one will push out, I think right there, to show us a little bit of depth there. So I don't normally change the scale unless, because if changing the scale of the stamp, if you make it too big, then it looks like it's really high up. So you don't really need to change the scale if it's only about 10 feet high up. You don't need to change the scale of anything. And that might look weird in the VTT as well, or when you're playing on a game, because you have some objects that are bigger than the scale than the things below on the other level. So I try to avoid that unless it's a big discrepancy, like hundreds of feet. And then you would definitely want to show a scale difference on the stamps. All right, but when it's only like 10 or 15 feet, there's not much of a difference in size and scale that I use for stamps being higher up. So again, and that's just a personal preference. If you really, really want to make the height difference to show up more, you can do that. I personally only do it unless it's like 100+ feet or so, and then really you can get to scale some differences. So now we need to create that gangway that I was talking about. So we'll go ahead and, oopsie, I didn't want to do that. We'll take the line shape here, we'll switch over to here, and then we'll go ahead and pick here, and we're going to have a gangway that goes across from here to here like this. So there's the gangway, and we can increase the brightness just a little bit to show that the height is a little bit higher up, right? So a little bit higher. There we go. And then we'll want to create access, so we got to do stairs. So we'll add in stair, and we'll do a wooden one, and then we'll do some stone ones. So the wooden one is to access the gangway. We'll bring the brightness down just a little bit. There we go. And then we'll put another one right here. And then we'll go get a stone stair right here. And then we'll go ahead and we'll make it a longer one. So we'll put the stair like right here. And then put another one right here like this. There we go. And we'll turn off any shadows that are there, and we'll bring the brightness down just a little bit. There we go. Okay, so this is the access that gets across. And of course, if the ship is almost fully complete, then you can always just walk across the boards that are holding up the frame of the ship, and then just walk on the poop deck and then across to the other side. But when that's not there, you have this access right here. And this gangway also works as a place where the overseer or master craftsman or whoever it might be is overlooking the workers, seeing that, making sure that things are putting together right. So think of it as like an observation kind of dock as well. So people can just kind of take a look at things. So we're getting the idea. We're at 99 changes, so we'll go ahead and save now. I usually save up to about 100 changes or so. We'll call this dry dock. All right, so now that we've finally got some elevation there, that's kind of nice. We want that. We'll paint in some shadows as well to create more height, but we won't worry about that quite yet. We'll focus on putting in the water now. And I'll show you a really cool way to put water in and to have things underneath it. So you don't have to be adjusting all these stamps. With the shape tool, there's a trick now where you can do that. So let's go ahead and open this back up. I want to make these kind of skids right here just a little bit longer because I want them to show up in the water. So we'll play with the nodes again. We'll get it nice and far out. Here we go. Oops, here we go. Down one. Oops. I think. There we go. Okay. So now what we'll do is I'm going to lock this so we don't accidentally select it. And we're going to use the shape, the pen, turn off the stroke, go to fill, texture, open up the catalog, and choose the water texture of your choice. It's up to you. Like we could choose this water if you wanted to. It's up to you. And what we'll do is we're going to follow this shape up until we kind of where we want the water to show up. So maybe we want it to be right about here. Just using that snap to grid. There we go. All right. And then just press enter, add. There we go. And then we're going to want to adjust this a little bit. We're going to want to take the base and bring that up a layer. There we go. And then I'm going to have to end up changing some things a little bit here. Let's go ahead and take these stamps right here. Copy, paste, delete them, and then put them down below here instead. There we go. Then I'll select this and just bring the opacity down. Let's go to opacity, and then now you'll be able to see things under the water with that kind of trick, so it's kind of nice. I'll push this back up. There we go. Let's go with right there. I think that looks, let's go with that. That looks good. Okay. Another thing you can do is you can use a stroke, but to show like waves or lines, just make sure that you change it from stamp to color, make it white, and then blur it. And we'll go ahead and zoom in close so you can kind of see the line here. So we'll turn the blur on. Got that line there. We'll change the size a little bit of the fill, change the size of the stroke. And then if you feel that line is too straight, you can break it up a little bit by just going over to shape, go over to the brush option, make sure the merge shape is on, and then I'll just do some very minor changes here like this to kind of make it look like there's some waves like that. There we go. Okay. All right, so you got some waves kind of going in. There you can see underneath. We can add some stuff underneath there if you want. Okay, that looks good. That looks good. This looks good. Okay. All right, so now that you've kind of put all that together, we now want to focus on how is it that I kind of put together some details with this dockyard. How was it I do that? What kind of things do I find, do you normally find in a shipyard or a dry dock? Well, you're going to find a lot of timber. You're going to find probably crates that are going to hold nails. It's going to hold rope, rigging, all of that stuff. So crates and barrels is always just kind of an immediate go-to. And there's also wood, lots of lumber or timber that you're going to have because boats need a lot of wood to be put together, especially in a fantasy setting. So what I'll usually do is I'll just go ahead and just type in wood in the catalog, and I'll make these artificial piles of wood. And I'll usually kind of line it up a little bit with the same size as the planks on the ship, so that way it's into some continuity. Otherwise, if they're this big, you just don't see any wood planks that are that big on that ship. So it kind of makes sense to scale it down to be either on the same size. Oopsie, made it a little too big there. Let's take a look. That looks about right. And I'll just go ahead and turn the snap to grid off. I don't need that. And I'm going to put them side by side like this. Just put down a couple like this. And then I'll change the brightness on this because this is the bottom part of the pile. And sometimes I'll even flip so that way there's not too much repetition. Then I'll select 4 more of those and then bring the brightness back up a little bit. Stack these right on top of each other. Make it a little bit brighter, you can kind of see it. And then I'll take 2 more, copy, paste, bring the brightness all the way back up, and then put that on top. And it's going to look like a pyramid of stacked wood. Then you just create the group, and then you have this nice stack of wood right here that you've grouped and put together, and now you can kind of just use it to stack these piles of wood wherever you want them. So let's go ahead and put a bunch of them. We want to create room. There it goes. Maybe a pile there. Put some over here too. Put one here. Put one here. There we go. Put another one here. And let's put 2 close together like this. Okay. So you've got your lumber now. The next step is to put down some cranes. You would expect cranes to be here because that's what's moving the logs around. So we'll go back in the catalog, look up crane. And we only have some in steampunk, and that's fine. We're going to want to scale them up. And you want them to be big enough to where they're going to be able to reach the ship. So make sure that they're big enough that they reach the ship. I'm going to put one here, and we'll put another one over here as well. Just on 2 sides, so that way both sides have an operating crane. That works out great. 2 cranes there. Okay, looking good. Some other things that we might want to put in are maybe putting in, let's see here. Let's put in those crates and barrels. Just type in crate. You're going to have to scale it down. And I'm going to bring the brightness down just a little bit. There we go. Put some crates all along here. Don't forget to put some on top of the boardwalk. Kind of makes sense. Maybe put a few on the ship itself if you have room for it. Maybe put some stuff up here, here. We'll change the shadows on these in a moment. Let's just kind of put this stuff together. Put some over here on this side too. Over here. Oop, I noticed that I missed a little bit of texturing right there. Let's go ahead and add that in there maybe. Here, go to foreground, shape, here we go. Oops, I see I missed it altogether, so it needs to go to the add mode of the mask tool. Fill this in, there we go, great. Make sure, did I miss anything over here? No, looks good. This looks good. Oh, missed a spot there, cool. That happens, sometimes you just gotta go over it. Let's go ahead and add a shadow to this to make it look like there's some depth to it. Increase the intensity, bring the blur way out, so that way it really looks like it's popping out. That's perfect. Okay. Let's go ahead and select all those crates and get those shadows going. A custom shadow, we'll go and put it in the center. I'm not going to do any cast shadows. In the past, I've mentioned that we will kind of go over cast shadows to show different times of day or night in the calendar, but people need to vote on that. So once they vote on that, then we'll probably proceed with that. Okay, so you got all that stuff together. Looks good. Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and create some poles that are going to be holding up the ship, because the ship seems to be just sitting upright. It needs something to hold it up. So there are a couple things that you can do here. You could look up Palisade, and there's some nice little sticks right here, and just put that beneath like this, and then it will look like there's some stuff holding up the ship. So we'll bring the brightness down. There we go. And then we'll put a couple of these. So we'll put one here like this. We'll put a smaller one right here like this, kind of holding the ship up. There we go. There we go. One more right here probably, and another one right here. And these are going to be like the poles that are kind of holding the ship up, because otherwise it would just fall over, right? Now, let's go ahead and do a trick on how I show a ship being kind of like incomplete. You want to have some boards that are missing. Cool little trick. You can use the shape tool for this. And then you could just turn the stroke off, turn off the merge shape. We're going to do fill, and we're going to do color black. And then we'll just kind of zoom in here. We'll make sure the layer is up, and we're just going to go ahead and follow some of the boards here like this. Press enter, go add, and it's going to show some black spacing in between. This is a way to kind of show that there's some parts that are incomplete. So they're kind of a nice little trick. Just do it to all the boards. If you want to show that some things are incomplete, that works. It works great. Let's put another one over here maybe. Kind of a nice little trick that you can kind of do if you want to show that there's some incomplete boards here. Let's go to add. There you go. So you see that you kind of get the trick, right? And of course, if you see that there, then it kind of makes sense that you want to maybe put some boards next to it where they're going to be put. So it makes sense to kind of put a board maybe going on across on top like this. And we'll change the brightness to a little too bright. There we go. That looks nice. And then we'll put a couple more here. Let's put some smaller ones too on here. And then let's put also some of these out around here too. We want to show like the scraps. Boards have been cut, right? It's a shipyard. And so we want to show that there are scraps from the cutting of the boards with saws. So we'll put a couple little pieces kind of lying around. Kind of makes sense. Put some here. Let's use some different sizes. One here, here. You can put some on the ship too. Here, here, and over here. And then I'll go ahead and just select every single one of those and mess with the shadow here. All right, increase the intensity of it. There we go. Okay. So you have that boardwalk. You've added some logs to put on here. Let's go ahead and save it, and then we'll do some more texturing. We'll do some more stuff in the water, and then we'll be done. We're pretty dang close. We're moving along so quickly. These are so much easier to make than you think. You just need to make the concrete or stone piers, make the boardwalk, make the frame for the ramp and everything to show that the ship is sliding down the ramp. All of those things you kind of need. And then you don't have to have the setup that I had, you could have a building on one of the sides. You could have it all being flat in one level. I just added some extra level to it there because I like to add in add in some verticality into my maps. I don't like to have them completely flat. It looks kind of weird. That's just kind of a personal preference. So we saved. Let's go ahead and use some dry dirt. If you just type in dry, and there's some dry grass right here. This works great for like sawdust. And so what we'll do is you want it to be around the same color as the wood, not entirely, because the inside, it's a little bit lighter, while the outside, the bark is darker. And there's usually going to be more of the lighter part of the wood when you're sawing because it's the inside and it's thicker. But we don't want it to be too bright that it kind of pops out. So we'll go ahead and go to color. We'll bring the brightness down. We'll bring the size down. There we go. And then we'll just apply it as we see fit like this. And this is going to kind of represent both sawdust and movement because people are walking around. They're catching dirt on their feet. They're moving things around. And so this kind of works well for that. And we might even do the same for down there as well. We can bring it down a little bit darker and just go ahead and put it down here like this. And I think even darker would work. There we go. Get some dirt down here. There we go. All right. Let's take a step back. Look at it. Yep, that looks good. And whenever it comes to texturing, there will be quite a bit of, it's just always going to be quite a bit of changes that are going to be made. So you'll quickly get to like 100+ changes when you're doing your texturing. Just kind of keep that in mind. Okay, let's go ahead and pull up the top layer and we'll do some color. We'll do some shading. I'm going to bring the opacity down. I usually go around 26, 30, around there. Softness all the way up. And I kind of want to show that there's a height differential right here. And so I'll just go ahead and paint on top like this, just to show that there is some shadow there. Put some here as well. And then when I take a step back, you kind of notice that it really does look more like there's some height difference there. So we'll go ahead and do the same thing here. Put that there. And I'm not going to touch the top of the dot because I don't want that shadow to pop up. We'll put a little bit on the side right here too. There we go. Just to kind of show some height. And the same thing here. I'll put a little bit here, just to show that there's some depth right here. That's good. Same thing here. We'll put some right here. Just don't go over the crane. Right, there we go. Okay. Just to show that there's some depth there. That's good. And then we'll go ahead and bring the size down and create a much harder shadow right here. Paint it. There we go. Looks good. Let's paint it here as well. All right, so you kind of see that harder shadow there. That looks better. We'll do the same thing right here to this, just to show that there's a little bit of a shadow here. All right, let's take a step back and just look at how the height is turning out. I think it looks pretty good. I like that. Let's go ahead and put in a little bit more shadow work here. Shadow work just takes a lot of work. You know, when you're painting, it's just always a lot of changes. That's just the way it is. But it always pays off. I guarantee you it really does pay off though. So it just looks so much nicer when you start putting in your shadows. It's another one of those tricks for depth. Contrast is not the only trick. So is light and shadow. So just kind of factor that in. There we go. Get those hard shadows there on the edges. So those things will really start to pop out more. Much, much better. Okay, we'll go ahead and save it. 130 changes is quite a bit. And we'll go ahead and put some stuff under the water as well, like maybe some cliffs or something to kind of show that there's rock underneath. We could throw in some waves. You know, as a shipyard, it's going to be near water, so it could be a lake, a river, the ocean, wherever you want it to be. So if it's a river, maybe you want to show the action marks, the marks of the wake of water moving. The movement, you can throw in some waves for that. Let's go ahead and do that. We'll go into the catalog, type in waves. We'll see some waves here. And I try not to make them too bright because they pop out against that blue. So I sometimes will bring the opacity down, especially if you're trying to show that the water is moving, but it's not moving fast enough to create all this white water. And so if you want to show that the water is moving a little bit slower, bring the opacity down of the waves. That will show the difference. So we'll go ahead and put some out here, here. I want to show just a little bit of wave action here, here. Put one right here, here. Get some longer ones. There we go. That's good. And then another thing that we can do is we can take that same texture, copy, paste it. We're going to put it on top of it again. We're going to turn off the stroke. We'll go back into fill, click water, and let's go ahead and add in some this here. There we go. Let's go ahead and bring up the fill size, make it a little bit bigger. Let's say about that big, and then we can bring the opacity down even more. There we go. Okay. Perfect. Didn't have to do any texturing, just had to layer these things on top of each other. That worked out great. Okay. All right. Let's take a step back and see what it looks like. I think overall this looks good. The other things that you can add is like maybe you want to have some workbenches. You want to add, maybe you want to add in more crates and barrels. Maybe you want to put a light source somewhere, put tools down. Those are great things. Throw in some tools. Right here, shovel works fine. You can put in hammers. Axes make sense. Just put down a couple hammers in here. One over there. One on top of this crate maybe. One over here. Here's an axe right here for cutting. Let's go put those next to the wood piles. Kind of makes sense, right? Put one other one by the wood pile. Put another one. Let's make it a little bit bigger. Put one over here by this bunch of wood. Put one over here. Kind of makes sense. There we go. So tools. Maybe we want to put some workbenches, like I said. So we'll put in a bench right here. We can place them just right against here if we want. We'll mess with the shadow first. Let's go ahead and play with shadows, so custom. Yeah, please let me know in the stream requests if you want to have directional shadows. Let's go ahead and put a workbench there. Let's put another one up here maybe. I think it kind of makes sense to put one right here. Another one right here. My suggestion is just don't make it too symmetrical. Like too much symmetry doesn't really, in my opinion, doesn't really look good unless it's like meant to be super symmetrical. But if you have an option to make it not too symmetrical, take that option, because what happens is there's a mix between symmetry and asymmetry creates contrast, and then it becomes more appealing to the eye. So you notice that there is symmetry in this map with the way that the piers is created with the stone parts and with the docks and everything, but what's not symmetrical is how I put the details down, where the cranes are, right? So that's the trick to the asymmetry to the symmetry contrast, is it's okay to have much of the foundation of it symmetrical, and then all the details are going to break up the symmetry. So put them in random places. Don't make them all the same, because symmetry just looks too weird. It seems unnatural to the eye to have too much. So always just remember to mix between symmetry and asymmetry to really mix that up. That's usually how I go about doing it. Let's put, since it's a workbench, let's put tools on it. It only makes sense that we should put tools on a workbench. So we'll put a couple in there. Okay, that looks good. Now the next part is just to throw down some filters. I think overall this looks good. I think it will select more of the waves. When it comes to, you know, I mean, realistic just means making something with it's exactly as, you know, you saw in maybe an image, you know, without a fantasy element to it. I always try to throw a little bit of a fantasy element into every map, but, you know, that doesn't always have to be there. With high fantasy, always throw in like a fantasy element. So like if you have like a world map, throw in maybe some floating islands, throw in a circular shattered island that would not form naturally with Earth physics. Throw in some unusually tall mountains. If it's a battle map, you know, don't just throw in just crates and barrels. Maybe throw in some statues. Maybe this is a royal dockyard or shipyard. Throw in some statues. That kind of stuff is what you kind of use to throw in more of the fantasy element. So if I wanted to throw some more fantasy element into this, I would probably pick a statue. And I'll just kind of pick a statue that I like the most. It doesn't really matter which one it is. You just kind of go through the various statues, kind of pick the one that you like. And you would maybe put the statue like maybe at the edge of these piers. We could use, here, give me a second, let's play around some stuff. We could put like some Gothic looking statues like right here on the edge of the pier right here. You could always do that. Desaturate it, put it down up against here, bring the brightness up on it, a little bit on it. Copy, paste. Like this is like adding kind of like a fantasy element to it. It's putting on that stuff. Maybe you wanted to put some more statues somewhere. You could put some statues, right? Let's pick this one again. We'll move it over to here. Maybe put a statue right here, kind of looking over, watching over the whole thing. So you can put a statue there. All these things kind of help to create the more fantasy element to it. Because for me, what I do is I start with the functional part first. So making the dockyard, making all the functional parts that makes it work. After all the function has been put together, then you can break up the realistic part and put down fantasy elements like crazy statues being somewhere. Those kind of things really, really help to kind of give it the more fantasy element. So I'll go ahead and put some shadow here as well. I really want to show there's some height here. So there's a shadow right there with the statue. You've got some statues right here at the edge of this pier. All those things help. Maybe you can put some lamps along here. All those things really, really help with putting the fantasy element together. Maybe you want to put more, maybe you want to have more elaborate texture. Like we can change up because there's much similarities between the bottom part of the tier and the top part of the tier. So we'll go ahead and maybe use like a tile texture. Let's go through the tiles here. Find just a really simple tile set. And what I'll do is I'll go ahead and just add it on first and kind of just see how it looks. Actually, what I can do is I can cheat and use a room. So I'll fill, we'll go into here, and we're going to snap to grid. Oopsie, that is the, let's go ahead and do this. Here we go. We'll add that in. There we go. Let's turn the blur off, bring the opacity all the way up. We're going to change this. We're going to edit it a little bit, bring the saturation down, brightness, and then we'll also change up the fill size. There we go. And then I can just take that same shape right there, copy, paste, and just put it right across. There we go. Now there's a very distinct difference between the bottom part of the tier and the top part of the tier. So that really makes a distinct difference. Let's go ahead and add some filters, and then we're going to call it good. So filters are really up to you. I generally always put down a clarity filter. You'll see the difference when I turn clarity on and then when I turn it off, right? So off, on, it really brings out the line work more, brings out the color. So clarity is a great one to add in, works great. If you want the stamps to kind of be more match a little bit more together, you could always use a color filter. You could use like red sky. Let me turn off red sky and you kind of see what it looks like when I have it on. So there's off and then on. So it's going to add a little bit of a red to it. Maybe it's by the ocean, so maybe adding in winter so that it looks like there's a little bit more blue in it. You could do that. Maybe you want it to be cold, warm, want to bring it out, bring some purples in. Makes it look kind of nice. It makes the water look okay. It's up to you how you want to go about doing that. You could also throw in a vignette if you really wanted to kind of fade out the edges, and then if you want the ship to pop out more, throw in maybe a spotlight that goes into the center there, right? So now you have the filters down. If you wanted to have like extra artifacts to where it was a little bit more grungier, you could also go into the catalog, go to Parchment World, and then click Old Paper, Overlay, and then you can add some additional artifacts to the map as well. Let's bring the size down. Let me turn it off so you can kind of see what that looks like. See, it seems kind of clean, but then when I add in that, it adds a little bit more grunge, a little bit more grunginess to the map. And I kind of like that because it kind of gives it that feeling of it's been worn, there's torn, there's weathering from everything, things like that. So it looks nice. And then we'll go back into our clarity and just really use the clarity to kind of make it pop out a little bit. There we go. All right. Yeah, so the last thing that I would recommend is you could put in light sources, you can put lamps if you want to make it at nighttime. You could throw in all kinds of things, nails, screws, hammers, all the things that you would expect, all the tools that a carpenter or a shipwright would need to build the ship. So think about that for your details, but you get the general idea. Build the stone pier first, then build the boardwalk in which people will be walking across. In fact, we could even put a couple boards that go across the boardwalk here. You just copy and paste a board, make it a little bit bigger, and just put it right here like this. And there is a shadow there that kind of blocks that, so we'll have to end up deleting that. But we'll put a couple that go across so that people can walk across. Copy, paste, put another one right here. Let's face it going this way like that. Okay, and then we'll just go in and I'm gonna erase this section right here where the shadow is, because this is above the shadow. So I'll just turn this off and just paint the shadow right off of it. There you go. Works perfect. Okay, let's take a look. Yep, this looks good. All right, let's take a step back. Just take a look at it. So you could make it a lot. You could make it a lot more. You could add a lot more saturation to it if you felt like it's not saturated enough. So I could go into here and just choose saturation, and this will really, really get it to be popping out a lot by bumping up that saturation with a color adjustment filter. That way, it really, really pops out. I have noticed that maps that are way more saturated, doesn't have to be oversaturated, but saturated quite a bit, those get a lot of clicks, especially on our Explore page and on our Reddit. So if you want to kind of make your map pop out more, saturation is that trick. Just remember not to oversaturate it too much, because if you start doing too much saturation, it just starts to look a little weird. So just boost it up enough to where it really kind of makes that color pop out more. Those are really the tricks for that. Okay, well, I think that's it for the shipyard or the dry dock. You guys got the general idea how I kind of put things together, and I think this worked out really well. I think it looks interesting. There's probably a lot more that could be done to it. Now, if you do like this one, I will be sure to include this map in the video description when I put this onto YouTube. Appreciate you guys being here. Don't forget to join the Discord, like I mentioned earlier in the stream. We have an incredible community there. Very helpful. Go check it out. And don't forget to also check out our stream request canny page, so that way you can request the kind of streams that you want to see. Because if you don't see them on the calendar, that's the only way that we're going to know, is if you go to that canny request page. Now, both those links for Discord and canny are at the top of the chat here in Twitch. So if you're looking for those links, kindly scroll up. You'll find them at the top. All right. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. This has been great, and I look forward to seeing you all again next Wednesday for the next stream. And for some of you, I'll see you on the Masterclass Monday stream, where we're going to be making some thermal pools. So I'm looking forward to doing that. A Masterclass is every other Monday, and it's for our power users. So if you're a power user and you're getting tired of the same kind of basic noob kind of stuff, definitely come join us on our Masterclass stream on our Discord every other Monday, 3 p.m. PST in VC1, which is Voice Chat 1. All right, thank you, everyone. Please stay safe and healthy, and merry map making. Auf Wiedersehen, everyone.